Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, dan salam kebajikan. First of all, let's thanks to God Allah who has given us mercy and blessing until we can joining us in this our presentation. Secondly, masalawat and salam to be our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who was broadcast from the darkness to the lightness. Okay guys, before we going in our presentation, let me introduce my members group. Me, Anugrah dan Mawadda as moderator and first speaker, Desi Ratnasari as second speaker, and Diato Nampa is last speaker. Well, I think that's enough about the introduction section. Let's come to the next section is presentation our material on the topic. Language Contact 2, Pidgins, Creoles, and New English. Okay, table of contents. 1. What are Pidgins and Creoles? 2. The formation of Pidgins. 3. The formation of Creoles. 4. Characteristic of Pidgins and Creoles. 5. Social historical factors in Pidgins and Creole development. 6. The emergence of New Englishes. 7. Factor influencing New Englishes. 8. Conclusion. The future of contact languages. Okay, what are Pidgins and Creoles? Pidgins are simplified languages that emerge when speakers of different languages need to communicate. They lack the complexity of full languages and often have limited grammar and vocabulary. Pidgins is a simple language that emerged for communication between speakers of different languages, usually used in coverage of temporary interaction. Pidgins has no native speaker and has limited grammar and vocabulary. Creoles develop from Pidgins when they become the first language of community. They are more complex than Pidgins and have evolved with their own unique grammatical features and vocabulary. Creoles is a language that developed from Pidgins and become the mother tongue of community. Creoles has more complex grammar and vocabulary and is used in various aspects of life.
So, I will explain the formation of Pidgins. This is three formation. The first is trade and commerce. Early Pidgins language often emerge in commercial settings where people from different linguistic backgrounds need to communicate for economic process. For example, in traditional trending regions such as South Asia, Pidgins a language such as Malay Pidgins or Singaporean English have emerged as an easy and efficient communication solution for traders from various countries. The second, migration and labor. Pidgin's language developed as a means of communication between groups of migrants and workers who come from various linguistic backgrounds. When migrant workers from different countries have to integrate in the same work environment, they often use Pidgins as a simple and universal form of communication. For example, in Indonesia, Pidgins is often used by migrant workers working in construction or other industries. The third, colonialism. Colonial powers often use Pidgins as a simple form communication with native population. For example, in West Africa, Pidgins language such as Nigerian Pidgins emerged as a result of interaction between Europeans and local population during the colonial period. So, the formation of Pidgin language was influenced by factors such as global economic trend, labor migrant, and interaction between countries in the area of colonialism. The Pidgin's language function as an effective means of communication in complex situations, facilitation social and economic integration between economic groups. Okay, the next is the formation of Creoles. The first is Pidginization. Pidgin language were originally a simplified form of communication and did not have the complexity of a full language. Emerging from interaction between speakers of different language, Pidgin lacks the complexity of a complex language and serves a basic communication tool in context of commerce or social interaction. The second, creolization. The Pidgin language became the mother tongue of new generation, developing its own grammatical structure and expanding vocabulary. A new generation of Pidgin speakers were born. This language began to develop into a mother tongue. This process is called a creolization, in which grammatical structure and vocabulary are expanded and encried, uh, creating a unique linguistic identity. The three, standardization. Creole language become a more standardization with a more formal grammatical and vocabulary. Over time, a Creole's language become a more standardization. The standardization process involves the development of more formal grammatical and vocabulary, making them more structured and usable in official contexts such as education and administration. The formation of Creole's language reflects complex social and cultural dynamic, the result of ongoing intercultural interaction. Okay, the next is characteristic of Pidgins and Creoles. The first is simplified grammar. But Pidgins and Creoles have a simplified grammatical structure compared to full language. They often lack complex tense and verb conjunction. The second is limit vocabulary. They typically have a smaller vocabulary than full language. New words are often borrowed from the language of the participant. The third is lexical divergence. Girls often develop their own unique vocabulary, reflecting their culture and historical context. Thank you. Okay, this is explanation for me. I return back to moderator.
Okay, thank you for opportunity. I'm Datanapa, so I will continue the material. In the material is socio-historical factor in Pidgin and Creole development. Its factor threat of Commenters' influence is early Pidgin's development in setting where speakers of different language needed to communicate for economic purpose. In the next is migration and slavery. In the Pidgin's emergence as a means of communication among a group of migrant and laborers from diverse linguistic background. And the next is colonialism. In the influence, colonial powers often use Portuguese as a simplified from a communication with indigenous population. Next material is the emergence of the new Englishes. In the first, global influence. English has spread globally due to colonialism, trade, and cultural influence. This has led to the emergence of the new varieties of English. And the second is local adaptation. As English has been adopted in the different parts of the world, it has been influenced by local language and cultures, resulting in distinct variation. And the third is language variation. The English's accessibility, unique pathological, grammatical, and lexical features reflecting the cultural and linguistic context in the which they have in development. Next material is factor influence new Englishes. The first point is linguistic substrate. Is the influence of local language of the phonology, grammar, and vocabulary of new Englishes. In the second is cultural context is the impact of the local customs, beliefs, and values on the development of new Englishes. And the third is the global interconnectedness in the influences of the other varieties of English and the interconnectedness of global communication on the evolution of new Englishes. And the last is social and political factor. The role of social and political forces such as colonial and globalization in shaping the new English. The next is conclusion, the future of contact language. Language contact continues to shape the linguistic landscape of the world, and the new language will continue the emergent understanding. This process is critical for the fostering communication, cultural understanding, and global cooperation. That's all for me. Thank you. Okay guys, maybe just this our presentation today at class. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.